So welcome back to another video on the channel, guys. We have just had another weekend of championship action, and normally on Monday I'll be bringing you guys the championship roundup, but as we only had 6 games going on in the championship this weekend, I didn't think that would make all too much sense. So what I thought I'd do today instead is today we're going to be grading every single championship club season for basically who we think's overperformed so far and who's underperformed. Throughout the video we will be discussing some of the games that went on over the course of the weekend as well. Do let me know in the comments down below, what did you make of your team's performance. In terms of my result of the weekend in the championship, I'm going to have to give it to Blackburn Rovers for their 3-0 home victory over Hull City. Hull were on some fabulous form going into this one, but Blackburn absolutely blew them away at Ewood Park with a fantastic performance, putting 3 goals past Hull. And then for my goal of the weekend, we had some absolute crackers scored in both the championship and in the FA Cup as well. For me, it's between Semi Ajayi for Rotherham for his goal against Leeds United and Bersant Selena for his ridiculous goal against Gillingham in the FA Cup. And before we do move on into grading the championship clubs this season, I will include your guys' comments on screen now. So if any of you guys did successfully manage to get any of your score predictions correct, then I will include your comment on screen. Now, I think for my championship predictions, I managed to get one of them correct this weekend. That was the Aston Villa against Ipswich Town game, which Villa did win 2-1. So fair play to everyone that got one right, but without further ado, let's hop into the video. So we'll start this video out at the bottom of the championship, and then we will work our way upwards. So coming up, first of all, we got Ipswich Town, and for their season so far, I've got to give them an E. It has been an absolute disaster for Ipswich. I think what makes this year all the more tragic is there was a lot of optimism going around the club at the start of the season. You know, when Paul Hurst had come in, a lot of Ipswich fans were, you know, tired of the football under Mick McCarthy. Last season in the championship, you know, they've been fairly solid. They were never great to watch, but they would always, you know, grind out the results. People like Martin Waghorn were very good last year, Joe Garner, Bersant Selena. All those players went and they decided to reinvest in a new group of players. Things haven't worked out for this squad so far, and the Ipswich fans have only seen 3 wins all season. We've seen some miracles in the championship over the last few years and some crazy relegation escapes, but if Ipswich are able to escape from this point, that will be some achievement. In 23rd, we got Bolton Wanderers, and for their season so far, I'm going to give them a D. The only reason I'm not going to give them lower than that is because they still do have, you know, a feasible chance of survival this season. Currently sat in 23rd with 22 points, 3 points off safety. The football around Bolton has been incredibly depressing this season. They've only scored 18 goals, the lowest scorers in the championship so far, and things have been really dreary for them. And it's fair to say that Bolton were probably given a bit of false hope at the start of the season because they were on absolute fire at the start of the season. They beat West Brom away from home, picked up some other fantastic results near the start of the season, but then things slowly started to unravel. Fans haven't been happy pretty much for the majority of the season with Ken Anderson. There's been protests going on there recently, and they do still have a chance of survival, but it's going to be very tough with their scoring record so far. And for Reading this season, I am also going to give them a D as well. It's been a failure of a season so far for Reading, there's no doubt about that. Sat in the relegation zone. It's once again been a very inconsistent season for them, and things have been on a general downward trend at the club, Reading, ever since they made the playoff final against Huddersfield Town. The season after that they weren't very good, and this season as well it's been more of the same really. Things have slightly been looking up a little bit under Jose Gomez. I think that things have slowly started to fall into the right place, but even so it's going to be a struggle for them to stay up this season. They are still within the shout. They're only 2 points off Rotherham at the moment, but it's been pretty bland at times this season under Reading. The football under Paul Clement was pretty depressing to watch. It's not been a good time to be a Reading supporter this season and could well be facing a relegation this season. In our 21st, we've then got Rotherham United, and for Rotherham's season so far, I'm actually going to give them a B. They are sat above the relegation zone, and that's what they set out to do at the start of the season. All that could change come the end of the season, of course. Reading are right on their tails at the moment, only 2 points behind them, but setting off at the start of the season, I went back and looked at a lot of, you know, prediction videos on YouTube. Pretty much the vast majority of people had Rotherham sat at the bottom of the table after they were promoted back up to the championship at the first time of asking through the playoffs. A lot of people were saying they wouldn't have the quality to stay in the league. They've been on a bit of a bad run lately in the championship. They have lost their last 3 games, but on the whole this season they picked up some pretty big results, and survival was always going to be the #1 priority for this Rotherham side. So for that reason, I'm going to give them a B so far. In our 20th, we then got Wigan Athletic, and for Wigan's season so far, I'm going to give them a C+. Now, Wigan was a bit of an odd team to do their grading really because they had just come up from League One, and so their main focus this season was always going to be to stay in the championship, and at the moment they are looking like they're going to do that. The reason I gave them a C+ though is because I feel like there could be more from Wigan this season. With some of the transfers they made, you know, they did spend quite a bit of money in this summer transfer window, bringing in players like Windass and Garner. They've not got a bad squad in my opinion, and with the way they were going at the start of the season, you know, after the first few months they were comfortably sat in mid-table. I thought that that would be where Wigan would be at the end of the season. They are sat above the relegation zone, so this season hasn't been a failure for them, but I feel like they could have done more. For Millwall's season, I'm I'm going to give them a C for their efforts so far. Last season, they were probably one of the biggest overachievers in the league. They went on a ridiculous unbeaten run near the tail end of last season and almost made it into the top 6. That would have been some story last season, but there seems to have been a bit of a fall off from Millwall this season. At the start of the season, things weren't really clicking for them. They were conceding some really sloppy goals, but it could always be argued that Millwall really set themselves up for failure with how well they did last season. You know, Neil Harris set himself an impossible target to reach the heights that Millwall did last season. I think a lot of people were expecting them to have a bit of a drop off this season. Maybe not to the extent they have. They are sat in 19th at the moment, but I don't think they're going to go down this season, but it has been a pretty average year for them. And Brentford are another club who I think it has been a very average year for them. I'm going to give them a C- for their grading this season. They were one of the sides who a lot of people were predicting to be a dark horse for the top 6 this season, and the way they started this season, that could have very well been the case. They had people firing on all cylinders going forward. Ben Ramos fitting well so far. Neil Maupay was looking brilliant. Ollie Watkins always a danger on that wing, but defensively things fell apart, and in seemingly every match at one point, Brentford were just capitulating every single week. Since then, they have been able to recover. They're now unbeaten in the last 5 matches in the Championship. They've managed to stay clear of the relegation zone, but with the expectations on Brentford at the start of the season, it has been a bad year for them. Sheffield Wednesday this season, I'm going to give them a C. It's been a very average season for Wednesday so far. They've had a manager change as well this season, and I wasn't really sure what to expect from Wednesday this season. Last year, they were poor in the Championship as well, but they did have an abundance of injuries. The same can be said about this season as well. Some of the managerial decisions at the start of the season were very strange to say the least, and we've not really seen this squad in charge with Steve Bruce so far, so maybe he'll be able to give some of these players a new lease of life. But with some of the injuries they have had and with some of the financial restraints they've been working under, it's not been a complete calamity of a season. You know, I don't think they're going to be going down this season, but they could have done a lot better. And for Preston, I'm also going to give us a C for our rankings so far. In my prediction video at the start of the season, I did predict Preston to finish in the top 6, which has made me look a little bit silly now, but even so, I think there have been, you know, some things that have happened since then. We didn't have a brilliant summer transfer window that had a part to play in it. We had an abundance of injuries at one point. You know, we had about 12 players missing at one point of this season, so Alex Neil's not been helped in many regards. Lately in the Championship, we have been looking a lot better though. Back-to-back wins now, a fantastic away victory against QPR and another follow-up performance against Stoke City with a convincing 2-0 away victory in that game. We've had a very good January transfer window so far, so I'm hoping we can end the year on a much brighter note, but as a whole for this Preston side this year, it's been a bit of an underachievement. Then sat above Preston in 15th, we have got Stoke City, and for their year so far, I'm going to give them an F. It really has been an awful season for this Stoke squad. Going back to the start of the season, Stoke were the favourites with every bookmaker. If you go back and look at some of the prediction videos on YouTube, I think you'd struggle to find the prediction video where Stoke weren't in the top 2, and rightly so. You know, at the start of the season, people were thinking they've got an England international in goal. Shawcross and Bruno Martins-Indy I thought would make a very good centre-back pairing for this league. Joe Allen and Ryan Woods, who was probably one of the most underrated midfielders in the Championship last season as their midfield. Bojan I thought would do absolutely excellently. Tom Ince has always been consistent in the Championship, and they got a proven goal scorer in Benik Afobe. On paper, everything looked like it was going to fall into place for this Stoke squad, and they really push for a challenge for the top 2 this season. None of that has happened though. Gary Rowett got absolutely everything wrong with this Stoke squad. The style of football was wrong. The game they had at the weekend against my team, Preston North End, they were really far off the pace. The only real saving grace for this Stoke squad is they are only 8 points off the playoffs, but judging by their performance at the weekend against my team, Preston North End, I don't think they're going to get anywhere close to the top 6. And then for QPR, I'm going to give them a B+ for their season so far. On the whole, I don't think a lot of people were anticipating QPR to be as good as they have been this season. I myself was almost certain that they were going to be battling it out near the bottom 3 this season with the way they started the year, some of the results they picked up early doors. They're under a transfer embargo now. After sacking Ian Holloway, I wasn't sure if that was the right choice, and then to bring in the manager like Steve McLaren, I still wasn't convinced. But on the whole, QPR are proving me wrong so far this season. Don't get me wrong, they have had some dodgy performances on the whole so far this season, but generally QPR have been very consistent so far. They played some good, attractive football. Their loan signings have been very effective, and watching Eze and Freeman link up this season has been an absolute joy at times. And then we got Birmingham City, and I'm also going to be giving them a B+ for their efforts so far this season. Judging by everything that Gary Monk, you know, all the restraints that Gary Monk has been working under, he's been doing a fantastic job with Birmingham. With all the transfer issues they were having at the start of the season, all the issues regarding the EFL, and possibly a points deduction coming soon, Gary Monk has put that to the back of everyone's mind at Birmingham City. They've had a really good season so far. They've been scoring a lot of goals after last season where they were struggling to hit the back of the net. He's been able to get the best out of this group of players so far this season, and arguably Gary Monk has been one of the managers of the season so far. And then for Hull City, I'm actually going to give them an A- for their efforts this season. At the start of the year, I wasn't convinced with this Hull City squad. They had a massive clear out of players in the summer. Fans haven't been happy with the owners at the club for some time now, and on the whole, there was just quite a negative feel around Hull City. I was convinced that they were going to be, in a relegation battle this season, but recently they have been on an unbelievable run in the Championship. That was put to an end by Blackburn Rovers at the weekend, but ignoring that result, they've been phenomenal in the Championship recently. They probably have been one of the biggest overachievers of this Championship season so far. Then next up, we got Swansea City, and for their efforts so far, I'm going to give them a B for their season. I think that's probably a fair rating for them. They have just come down from the Premier League, and so probably a few fans were expecting them to be really pushing on for the top 6 this season, but I always thought that this would be sort of a transition year for this Swansea side. They lost quite a lot of players in that transfer window, and considering what Potter's been working with, I think he's been doing a fairly good job with them so far. They play a good style of football, they got one of the youngest squads in the Championship, and they are only 6 points off the playoffs, so really anything is possible for the end to the season. Then we got Aston Villa, and for their year, I'm going to give them a C-. Now, Aston Villa have had a really topsy-turvy season so far, and it's quite hard to make sense of it all. In the summer, there was a whole lot of drama surrounding Aston Villa with all their financial issues. It was feared that Jack Grealish would have to be sold to cover them. In the end, that wasn't the case, and they actually signed some top players. In terms of the options in the Aston Villa squad, on paper, it's probably one of the best teams in the Championship, and so for them not to be sat in the top 6 currently and to be, nowhere near the top 2, it's been a bit of an underwhelming season for Villa. Everything that happened with Steve Bruce, him getting sacked, things turned quite sour with him this season, and things under Dean Smith so far have been a little bit up and down. They started well, but then they hit a bit of a dodgy patch in the Championship. I think a C- is fair because overall, I think that this Villa squad has underachieved with what it is capable of achieving, but they are still within a shout of the top 6 this season, only 4 points off Derby in 6th. For Nottingham Forest, I'm going to give them a C for their season so far. I think it's been an okay year for them, but nothing that's really blown anyone out of the water. They had a massive summer transfer window, which really raised the expectations at Nottingham Forest, signing players like João Carvalho, Gil Diaz, Goncalves, and Lewis Grabban. Things did take a little bit of time to get going for this Forest squad under Aitor Karanka, but I think that things were slowly building in the right direction. Then they've now gone ahead and lost Aitor Karanka, and so the rest of this season for Forest is a little bit up in the air. They did have a very good home victory last time out against Wigan Athletic, beating them by 3-1, but I can't help but feel like this Forest squad was capable of so much more. They could still make it into the top 6 this season. That's still wide open. So what I want to know from you guys is, out of the sides who are currently just below the playoffs, who do you most realistically see getting into that spot? For Blackburn Rovers, I'm going to give them an A- for their season so far. I've been very impressed by Blackburn on the whole so far. Currently sat 8th in the Championship, knocking on the door for the top 6 this season. They have done very well, and they have exceeded my expectations, really. Coming back up to the Championship at the first time of asking under Tony Mowbray, I don't think that they have any fears of going down this season. I thought they'd sort of be sat in around 16th in the Championship, that lower mid-table spot, but they've exceeded that so far. They have had a couple of dodgy results on the road so far, but to be sat only 3 points off the playoffs after they've not really spent a fortune, I think it's been a very successful season for Blackburn so far. With Bristol City in 7th, I'm going to give them a B+. I think it's been a very successful season for Bristol City this far, and if they do make it into the top 6, that will be some achievement. Their expectations at the start of the season were fairly high, of the last few transfer windows. They have spent a bit of money, but overall I think the Bristol City have been doing fairly well so far. What's been most impressive about this Bristol City side is their defensive resilience. After losing players like Aidan Flint and Joe Bryant in the summer transfer window, they lost Bobby Reid going forward as well. They had quite a lot of big players leaving the club, but they've reacted well to that, and other players really have stepped up and taken their chance in the first team. For Derby County, I'm also going to give them a B+. They're currently sat in the top 6. I think that overall they're hitting all their targets. They're expected to be in the top 6 this season, and currently they are doing that. I would suggest that this is probably Derby's best chance of promotion that they're going to get for the next few years, really, considering that their squad on the whole is quite an aging squad. They've got a lot of experience in there, but over the next few years, I think this Derby squad will change quite dramatically, really. It's going to be interesting to see how Derby do fare come the tail end of the season, if they are going to bottle it again or anything like that. But I do feel as if there's a bit of a new mentality around this Derby squad. We've seen that in some of the cup games they've had already this season, the game they had against Southampton recently. And the race for the top 6 this season, at the end of the season, is definitely going to be a close one. In 5th, we've got Middlesbrough, and for their season, I'm going to give them a B so far. They've been hitting all their targets, so I can't give them anything lower than that, really. A lot of people were expecting Middlesbrough to be in this region of the table, and so far they've achieved that. It's fair to say that it's not always been pretty to watch. I have seen quite a few Borough fans who have been unhappy with Tony Pulis and everything going around the club at the moment. They've only scored 31 goals this season. That's the same as Reading, who are currently sat in the bottom 3. But you can't argue with it, If they are to carry on grinding out these results, then Middlesbrough could very well be facing Premier League football next season. In at 4th, we then got West Brom, and for their efforts this season, I'm going to give them an A-. Considering the squad they've got, I think a lot of people were expecting them to be in and around this region of the table, and they've got a very strong shout of finishing in the top 2 come the end of it. They've got a game in hand on all the teams above them, and they are only 4 points off Norwich in in second place at the moment. They're the top scorers in the league with 57 goals so far, and Darren Moore's done a very good job for them so far. And what I want to know from you guys is, out of the clubs currently at the top of the championship, who do you think is going to be the top two come the end of this season? Then in that third, we got Sheffield United, and for their efforts so far this season, I'm going to give them an A. What a job Chris Wilder has done at the club there, working with a really limited budget. Some of the signings they brought in on the cheap have been absolutely phenomenal. I get the impression that there's a different feeling around Sheffield United at the moment. There's certainly a lot more quality in the squad now than there was this time last season. Gary Medine gives them a different option going forward. He's a better alternative to someone like Leon Clark in my opinion. Ollie Norwood in midfield, absolutely fantastic option. John Egan's done very well in their defence so far, and Dean Henderson's been a massive bonus for them so far this season. So Sheffield United, if they do make it into the top two this season, that will be some achievement, and rightly so, get an A from me. And then for our top two, currently we got Norwich City coming in at second. They are going to get an A+ from me. I've got to hold my hand up and say I did not see this coming. Norwich last season in the Championship, they weren't that bad. They were just a very average sort of mediocre side. I wasn't convinced that Daniel Farke was the right man for the job. I know a lot of Norwich fans felt the same at the time. Last season they were a bit of a one-man team really with James Maddison. I thought now that they've lost Maddison, they may fall apart this season. That's not been the case though. Some of their signings have been absolutely phenomenal. They have picked up some of the bargains of the century. They've dipped into the foreign markets in the transfer window to get some better value there, and some of the absolute gems that they've uncovered, people like Emi Buendia, Leitner, Timu Pukki, amongst countless other players, Norwich really have been a joy to watch so far this season, and rightly so, get an A+ from me. And then finally, sat top of the Championship, we have also got Leeds United. They're also going to get an A+ from me. It seems like absolutely ages ago thinking about Leeds last season, but Leeds at times last season were absolutely tragic. If you think of the football that was being played under Paul Heckingbottom, the contrast to Leeds United from last season to this season, they are really worlds apart. The style has been absolutely excellent to watch, and it's going to be a really interesting running from now until the end of the season as to who is going to win the Championship. So what I want to know from you guys is, out of those top four, who do you see winning the Championship come the end of the season? Let me know down below. I'll be reacting to some of the comments in this video at the end of the season. And I think that another similarity between Leeds United and Norwich City is youngsters have also played a key role in their season so far. People like Jack Clark's been brilliant for Leeds this season. Bailey Peacock-Farrell, although has made a couple of mistakes, has also had some big games for Leeds. But overall, I think that Leeds have more than justified an A+ ranking for their season. But guys, there you have it. There are my Championship rankings for each Championship club and what I have made of them so far. So do you guys agree with my verdicts? Let me know down below. And before we do wrap up today's video, we also have some games going on tomorrow in the Championship as well, which we do need to predict. We got Swansea going up against Birmingham. I don't see all too much being in this one, although Birmingham have hit a bit of a rough patch in their season lately. They were without a win in their last 4 Championship matches, and Swansea have been looking quite decent. I'm going to fancy Swansea to just edge that one by 2-1. And a massive game going on at the bottom of the Championship, which could be a season definer between Bolton and Reading. Currently the two sides sat in the relegation zone above Ipswich at the moment. A win could take either of them outside the bottom 3. That one's going to be a very nervy game of football, and it'll be interesting to see which side looks to take command of the situation. I don't think there's going to be much in it. I'm going to predict it to finish as a 1-1 draw. So do let me know down below, what do you think is going to happen in those two fixtures. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for this video. So thank you so much for watching. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure you do leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. As well as that, make sure you do subscribe for some regular Championship content. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.